So for question 2, it says, Luke, what tactics and methods do you use to keep learners engaged when the content is dry, stigmatized, or compulsory? Think anti-harassment definitions. The learning is specifically going to be in person, but the group is too large for activities to be feasible. Thank you. Indy, I have thoughts and feelings, but would you like to tackle this one first since I just tackled the other one?
I would love to, because with large groups, I've always found it incredibly effective to take the training and make it introspective. So you cannot ask questions to the group, or maybe it's too overwhelming to do that. Have them journal, have them write their notes, have them look at the content from a personal perspective, walk in someone else's shoes. That not only makes it more relevant to them, but it makes it more personal. And whenever you can make content, no matter who it is, more personal, it is more effective in the long run. Another couple of techniques that I thought about that I'd used, but just never really thought about, they became automatic, is how do you feel about the content? So let's say I'm training something and it is dull and it is boring and it is overwhelming and I really don't want to train it. Well, they're really not going to want to be there. So one technique that may seem a little unusual, really sit down for a minute and find out how you feel about that content. And if you bring that energy or you bring that power to it, they will follow you. So if they know that you don't like it and you know that they don't like it and they know that you don't like it, you see where I'm going. So what can you change in your attitude or your perspective about the content to make it more interesting? If you want more tactile ways, everybody has a cell phone. You can always run a back channel. Have them submit questions using Twitter or using some other back channel, and then every so often answer those questions. So it gives them that feeling that they are a part of the training and that they are forming the questions. In other words, have a plan, work your plan, but be willing to adjust based on the questions. Do a deep dive in something that someone asked a really good question. You're going to cover it in 3 units, but now is a good time to cover it. Change it up a little bit, especially if it's the same training that you've given the same way over and over and over again. And I think if you bring that energy and you bring that passion, even though it may be a passionless topic, that will make a difference in the training. And then ask the participants to set goals before they start the training, and then to discuss whether or not they met those goals after the training. Yes, we asked them what they like. We asked them what they learned. But what did they accomplish the goals that they planned on? And if not, why? And then you can use that to adjust the training later. So those are some of the things that I always think about. I love the introspective aspect, especially looking at myself, because if I am bored, you're going to be bored. It doesn't matter what I'm training. It could be the most exciting topic in the world. But if I come into it with this, oh, I really don't want to be here, but you guys all have to be here and it's required, maybe everybody can be a little introspective, and that would just make it a lot more exciting. That's some of the techniques that I use with large groups.
I love it. So we did not compare answers beforehand, but that's amazing, because the first thing that I wrote down was, how big of a transformation are you looking for?
Yes.
Because it's like what you said, where if I'm going into something where I'm like, here we go again, like time to do this other super boring training kind of thing, it's just not going to have that for that feeling, and it's going to 100% carry over to your learners, your employees, your students, whatever, and they're going to be in the exact same kind of thing. So the good news, as Indy was just describing some awesome methods, but the other thing that I was thinking about too is that there have been other different types of dry content, if you will, that have really come alive and have been very interesting to see about where it's taken people. So I can give you a couple of different types of examples. So one of them was actually from the MIT virtual lab, and it created a type of a simulation that talked about with workplace bullying. And what it did is that you were just actually in the shoes of somebody who's responding to their emails, but the emails that were coming in was from another coworker bullying another coworker, and then you had to pick and choose from 4 responses about how you're going to respond back to that email, and then every time that you responded back to it, it created another email. It didn't go away. So it kept on generating more and more problems. And it was almost like a choose your own adventure type of like of a game, if you will, but it was upon like real life events. And depending upon what you said, it would make a huge impact. But it was this so weird because it mimics Outlook. It looked like your inbox. So you're like,
That's
this
awesome.
feels real that, John is
Yeah.
making fun of Chris and like, what do I do kind of thing. It was a very odd type of a feeling, but it really hit home because it made you think about, oh, I don't want to, I need to be careful about my answer here. I can't just ignore this. I need to, I need to give it some thought. But then also from a couple of different studies that came out that was using virtual reality and then leading into conversations, there were some incredible changes too. One of them was actually a study that was done in Spain using virtual reality, using Oculus, where they brought in people who are rehabilitating, who were domestic abusers, and they put them into the situation where then they had to actually go through and listen and watch in this Oculus where the other person, this virtual avatar, was actually being the aggressor. And what they found is that for a majority of these males who were the domestic abusers, they backed down because they're like, whoa, no one's ever talked to me like that kind of thing. Like they were very uncomfortable. And it's just like, well, welcome to the situations that you have created. Like this is what other people have gone through. So they showed this level of empathy. And there is this carryover of empathy too from another study that came from Stanford that was asking people about almost a before and after about how they felt with the homelessness crisis. And for a lot of people who came in at first, they're like, it's fine. We can just deal with it, whatever. It wasn't a big deal to them. Sure enough, they went through the virtual reality training where they experienced what it was like to get fired and then to lose your job and come back to your apartment. There's the eviction notice. What are you going to do? And at the end, sure enough, they had more empathy in saying, oh, wow, this could happen to me. I need to figure out what to do. So the topics, going back to the question about like having dry topics, talking about things pertaining to like either homelessness problems or talking about from abuse or from harassment, whatever, things that definitely you're like, what do I do here? I need some type of creativity. And I found those were kind of the Kickstarter to then be able to have a much bigger conversation of just, this is going to be a transformation conversation. You're not just taking this training to then say, hey, I did a training, check mark, go on my way. This was, no, we're going to talk about this. Like this has evoked emotions and feelings from people. And then the other thing too is just thinking about, and I know this sounds like an odd question because of course we're designers, we're the trainers, we're the leaders, we're the whatever, but then be ready to facilitate and guide that conversation. Because if you get some powerful emotions from people and they really start to pour and want to have a conversation and talk more about things, you need to be ready to ready to handle that. And if you weren't prepared for that one, it's going to be like a mind blowing type of a thing. So those are some of the things that I've seen that were interesting types of approaches to taking some of those more types of conversations.
I think those are great approaches. I love them. I
Yeah.
love them,
Yeah. So,
especially like the simulation one. I actually did a homeless simulation once, in which basically, no matter what choice you made, you became further and further in poverty, closer to being evicted, and then by the end of the game, no matter what choice you made, you were always evicted, and you had a
oh,
child,
wow.
and you had to go
Sure.
through that. And it was that empathy, as you described, that fundamentally made a difference with me saying, oh, I mean, that won't ever happen to me, to being able to walk in that person's shoes. And that is what makes those type of experiences real. And even with a large group, you can find some small way of integrating that. And it's amazing the transformation in a group who hated the training last year and love it this year. So all of these techniques I think are worth at least seeing whether or not you could put a little piece of it in the training or in that workshop or whatever it is that you happen to be teaching. So because they're all very effective.
Absolutely. Well, and also we're going to put all the links in the show notes, by the way, folks, as we've been giving example after example. So there'll be lots of reading if you would like to read more and to learn more. That will be in there for you. Any other thoughts on this question, or you think we're good for this one?
No, I think we're good for this one.
All right, cool.